I got some blood test results back. Now, okay, I will admit it, my real age. And I have blood tests going back to when I was 30 and 36. Yes, I have not been the most consistent, I will admit it, but it was pretty cool seeing those results to essentially justify all the things I said in the video.
So I thought it might be fun to have a conversation about aging. And yes, that's probably why I decided to sit by the greatest 3 movies ever made on Laserdisc. Bought it at a flea market in Paris. Best decision of my life. Got a quote here on this fridge magnet that my mom gave me many years ago. It is not true that people stop pursuing their dreams because they grow old. They grow old because they stop pursuing their dreams. I think nothing could be more true. I'm someone who's thought a lot about age. Fun fact, we're going to lead in with this story actually. I did a DNA test about a year ago, and recently they updated the information they give you, right? As they learn new things or whatever, you get more info from the same test. And I had 2 things pop up for myself. One is likely accelerated facial aging. In other words, my face will probably look older than it should, although probably depends how I treat it. And the other one was slower epigenetic aging, meaning my biological age will be slower or younger than my actual age. And I was like, that's interesting. So the pattern of my life will continue where I am the oldest, I look like at least the oldest person acting the most childish and energetic everywhere I go. Perfect. This makes a lot of sense. Age is fascinating to me. I've thought about this probably since I was 20, 21 in college and thinking through, looking at people as they get older and thinking like, they seem to get boring or this, or, just questioning the whole thing. What I want to talk about today is more about, I think, mindset and energy and ultimately our health. I'm in my late 30s and I have friends across the spectrum. I have a couple friends almost exactly my own age, and I have a bunch of friends older in their sort of early 50s, and I think this is a really important thing to do in life. Try to have friends who are like ahead of you in some way, right? Whether it's just that they're older or they have a more successful business or whatever, that you can learn from, and you can be like, hey, how was this experience, or what was this? Or they can even just act as a point of inspiration. And to have friends who are younger as well. And so I have a bunch of my closest friends are a few years younger than me, maybe 4 or 5 years younger than that. And it's very interesting with energy and aging and how people behave. I used to think that being 60 meant you were basically getting off a bus with a bunch of other 60-year-olds when you traveled. You know the scenes. You're in Paris or Prague or New York and a bus pulls up and a bunch of really gray-haired people get off and they're like, with their cameras and their tour guide. I used to think that was sort of 60, 65, like that's what that age was. And when I say used to, I mean, in my like mid-20s or something, right? You're like, wow, like 60 is super old. And then, and I've told this story before, I technically met him when I was a child, but I basically met for the first time as an adult one of my uncles from New Zealand. And we spent a month traveling through Central America together. And when we were at a surf bar in Nicaragua in San Juan del Sur, if you're curious, and it's 2 a.m, and I'm the one who's like, can we go home? I'm tired. I was like, 65 is not that old, apparently. This is an interesting reframe of things and how life needs to be. And the more I've looked into this, the more you look at people who do what they love for a living, who are in their 80s and they're still working away. And then you see people in their 50s who have like given up on life. It's like, this is interesting. And as someone who loves life, and maybe it's an ENFP thing, it probably is a bit, but it's also maybe just a Dan thing. Like, I want to make the most of every day and I want to like make the most of my life. And so the thought of having sort of a cutoff where like, yes, of course, eventually we'll all die, but really wanting to maximize the time I do have, right? So I'm very interested in this stuff. And so when I meet someone, like I have a friend in Spain who's in his mid-50s, plays competitive beach volleyball with people in their 20s and beats them. Not only that, but the first time we met, it was on the street randomly. And he was with a group of friends, ended up joining them, going to this bar. And it was like, we're dancing away. It's 80s music in this weird bar. And it's like 1, 2 in the morning. And he's like, okay, I gotta go. I have to drive to Alicante in the morning for a volleyball tournament. Alicante is like a 1, 2 hour, I think probably 2 hour drive. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, we have to be there at 7 a.m. This guy's in his 50s. 2 hour drive, hungover in the morning. Next day I get a text, yeah, we won. It's like, what? Amazing, right? And I've talked to him about this too, right? And there's some aspect of this that is genetic to an extent, right? Where some people have a bit higher energy and all those things. But there's a huge amount of it that is attitude that I found. You know, one of the things he told me when I was asking him about it is he's like, most people I know, I have to stop being friends with them when they're about 35 because they can't keep up, and they sort of look at me like they make me feel old, and they have these kind of old routines and way of living, and so I tend to like basically stop spending time with them because it makes me feel older. And for the record, this is not like the irresponsible, crazy human being. He's got a very successful job. He's raised 2 wonderful daughters and been a great father. It's like, it's not that. It's not the I deny getting old, I'm a man-child. It's the source of energy and love of life and goofiness and fun. And I'm lucky to have a few of these role models in my life. My mother is another one of them, who in her 60s has been traveling the world. Last year she spent this year, actually, a couple months ago that is last year because it's March now. Yeah, sorry. There we go. In 2023, she spent about a month in Africa, in a couple different countries, visiting friends and also going on safari and all these things. A couple of years back, she backpacked South America for like 6 months on her own and, staying in hostels and stuff. And this was the funniest part of it. She tells me, she's like, yeah, I met these friends. I'm going to go visit them in Germany. They invited me to come stay with them for a week and, they'll take me around and stuff. The friends she met were like 32. So she made friends with this 32-year-old or 30-year-old or whatever German couple who were like, yeah, come party with us. Like, please come visit us. Pretty lucky to have these inspirations, right? And for me, age is not exactly a construct because it does influence us, but there's certainly an element. There's been studies on this where they've had people essentially role play being younger and spend like a week pretending they were 20 years younger and hanging out with old friends, talking about the good old days. And they had people objectively measure their age before and after by things like photos, reflex test, and there were, I think, a couple other things, but they were objective measures of age, biological age. And they reported that after this time, people actually showed like reverse aging in terms of when they were evaluated. Those looking at their photos said they looked younger, more energized, their reflexes improved, all this sort of stuff. It's pretty fascinating, right? And what's interesting to me is I can remember when I turned 30, I started to feel older. Like for some reason in my mind, it was like 30. And I remember having thoughts like, oh, maybe I shouldn't run as much. I'm getting older. I might hurt my knees. And I know where this comes from. There's a certain family member who has sort of those sort of worrisome thoughts, like be cautious. And I started having those sort of thoughts and I started having maybe like a little more back pain and it was like, what? And I can say now, like I am healthier now than I was 10 years ago. Probably have more energy as well and all that sort of stuff, or at least the same. But I definitely noticed how our perception of our age, and something I've wanted to do that I may do in the future is like change my age. It sounds weird, and I'd have to do it as part of like writing a book or something because it would just feel like I was lying otherwise and people might think I'm crazy. But I really was thinking like, what if I just told everyone I was 29 or 32? And how would that actually affect my biological age, sort of like having that difference of feeling and everything else? Rather than that, I've just decided to ignore age and just live and that. Anyhow, I should maybe share a couple tips or things that I've noticed with this. It's mostly meant to just get everyone thinking. And B, there's a couple things that I hope come from this video. One is that it helps some people change your perception about what it means to get older. And maybe you're in your 30s or 40s and you haven't been pursuing a dream and you're like, is it too late? Definitely not too late. Definitely not too late. I also think that reframing what you think of aging and having older people who are great role models will slow your aging and make you feel better and potentially have more energy, better health, all these sorts of things. That's been my experience at the very least. The other thing is a few things I've noticed. First is the people around us have a big impact on our aging. So if you value this, like what things I'm talking about, if you want to have a lot of energy, have that youthful love of life and zest, spend time with people who have the same thing, like 100% requirement. The other thing is, of course, diet, exercise, all that stuff definitely matters. That plays a big role. I would very much look into it. For men, testosterone levels, very important. Things like beer, bad diet, not good for the testosterone. And that can be a huge part of the feeling with aging. With women, I know hormones play some role as well. I just don't know enough because I've just selfishly researched it in terms of myself. I never thought I'd be making a video on this stuff. But I know it can make a difference. And doing, it goes back to the fridge magnet I showed at the beginning of the video. Doing something you love, being excited for life, having a lot of interests and hobbies and things that you are just excited to do is a huge role. The people that I've met, I remember when I was still living in Vancouver in my mid-20s, I met this guy, David, and he was 65, 70. He'd retired, and he was starting to write fiction books, like epic fantasy fiction. And he said, I just want to write a great book for my granddaughters. And I thought, like, that's so cool. Here's this guy, he's retired, he worked in business his whole life, and now he's pursuing something that he's so excited about. And he'd go to Paris every year for a month or two and be inspired. And, I thought that was super, super cool. And there's absolutely something to be said by having a purpose and something we're drawn to keeping us going. I think many people have heard this. I'm guessing the statistic has changed now with medicine and everything else, but there was a statistic that the average man died 2 years after their retirement, which is sort of that, right? You retire, like, what else am I gonna do? You lounge around, you lose your zest for life, everything else kind of slows down. So figuring out your purpose, things you're excited about, maintaining that love for life, that curiosity, that zest, that makes a huge difference. Surrounding yourself with people who have the same sort of thing and can be inspirational. And I think avoiding as many of like the mainstream maybe narratives and stereotypes and things like that about aging probably might help as well. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments on this. This is just a topic I'm really interested in. My hunch is ENFPs age better than most people based on my work and the ENFPs I've met around the world. Not to say it's going to be like universal, but the fact that we're naturally curious, we like change, we like new things, probably keeps us excited about life. And I think ultimately being excited for life is probably the ultimate anti-aging pill. Thanks for watching this video. I will see you in the next one soon.
So just a quick update. Since filming the video you just watched, I got some blood test results back. Now, okay, I will admit it, my real age, I'm 39. And I have blood tests going back to when I was 30 and 36. Yes, I have not been the most consistent, I will admit it, but I've got some reference points. So looking back at those, it's pretty interesting because, in the video you just watched, I talked about how I believe our mindset is important and, health and different things can definitely impact our aging and that it doesn't have to be some fixed thing where we get worse and worse. And well, let me just say it. My results were awesome. So most health indicators stayed the same or improved over the last 9 years. And testosterone, which is generally thought to be a sign of male aging, testosterone is tied to things like energy level, confidence, sex drive, muscle mass. That, in theory, goes down 1% per year for men from age 30. Mine went up 46% since I've been 30, or 36. From 30 to 36, it was the same. And it has went up 46% since then. No, I'm not juicing. And I do sometimes lift weights, but I think I was lifting weights probably more often then. In fact, I know when I was 36, I was working out with a trainer 3 times a week when I did that test. And since I just got back to Prague from Spain, I haven't actually lifted weights in the last month. I haven't rejoined a gym here. They all require these stupid contracts that don't work very well when you're nomadic. And yeah, so I can't say I'm surprised because honestly, I feel it. I feel wonderful energy and enthusiasm for life and all that good stuff. But it was pretty cool seeing those results to essentially justify all the things I said in the video, to have them just come up here with this perfect timing. That's it for the update.